Yeah. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Would you please stand, and we're going to have a prayer by Mr. Ed McCullough. And then we're going to recite the pledge. I ask everyone to forgive me for not standing, but I'm still having some knee problems. But I'm here up here.
Let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you that we can gather together as concerned citizens of Central. We thank you, dear Lord, for this opportunity to have this city, to be able to go through the processes that are necessary to make our city better. We ask you to bless this meeting and bless all the participants. In my name we pray, amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
roll call.
Dijon, LeBou, here. Messina,
Here.
Moak,
Here.
Washington.
Here.
We have 4 present.
I'd like to open the meeting up with a small reason why we're doing this. One of the things that I stated at our last council meeting, that this is a very important ordinance. It's one of the largest ordinances that we've ever really looked at in whole. And this is going to control growth. It's going to look at the safety of this city. But most of all, I wanted something that the people were going to be happy with. And I think we're all on the right track for accomplishing all this. This is a workshop. In a workshop, we discuss, we don't have a vote. There will not be a vote tonight. But I would like to have the floor open, that we can have feedback. It will be carried out in an orderly fashion. You will be able to state your opinion and what you think is right and what you think you would like to see the city. Everyone was invited. That's number one. So if you're not here and you have a problem and you wasn't here, you can only blame yourself. Another thing, I didn't want this council to really go out and pass something that we didn't have a full understanding of. Some people say, well, you're not doing your homework. Well, we can do our homework and we can come to our council meeting, but I don't feel that the council meeting is the place that we need to break this up or make any harsh decisions or pass opinions, because it could possibly take all night. I personally have gone through this document, and some things I agree with, some things I don't agree with, but as a whole, I'm going to say this again, I think that we're on the right path to have a city that we can be proud of. It's not formal, whereas I'm going to have everybody in a row to stand up. If you have an opinion, we're going to hear it. I would first like for the audience to, if you have any comments, you can make them, and then I have some council members here that I'm sure have some comments also. So what I'm mostly doing is just setting the format on what we're going to do. I'm going to turn it over to our city clerk. We have our city attorney here who's going to take some excellent notes. I know. I want to thank again Ms. Morris and Mr. Barrow, Mr. Muhammad, because They have really worked on this. Is it anybody else that I know who has worked on? Well, everybody who has participated thus far, I just want to say thank you. But I want this to be the best. I think this council want this to be the very best. So, Mr. Clerk.
Item number 2 on the agenda, discussion and public comments concerning the following. 1, an ordinance to amend, reenact, and rename the Central Unified Development Code as the City of Central Subdivision Regulations and to provide for related matters by Mayor Pro Tem Washington and Council Members Dijon and Messina. Item number 2, an ordinance to enact the Comprehensive Zoning Code and to provide for related matters by Mayor Pro Tem Washington and Council Members Dijon and Messina.
You've heard the topic. This is a public comment period. So is there anyone in the audience who have any comments, any suggestions? Mr. RJ, could you please stand and
Sure.
state your name and
RJ Saucier, City of Central, 6643 Bryce Canyon Drive. This may be overkill. You see all the yellow here. This is done in a good spirit. There's nothing harsh about this, but I've not seen this document before. And I do appreciate the importance of it. And I'm also keenly aware of the hard work that's gone into it. There's no doubt about that. What you will hear from me tonight, though, are some details, some of which change even a little bit of the philosophy where we are. So maybe I'm going a little too far afield, but that's the kind of thing that counsel and guidance can provide if that's the case. Some are just things that need clarifying. They're just errors. There are some. So there's a whole spectrum of things. But quite frankly, I don't think this is ready to go to council yet in this form. And with the stuff I have here, if you guys are patient enough to want to go through this, I really think that a fair amount of work could go back into this good document and make it a better document. And I think it's that important. I think we ought to spend the time to make a good document about it. But if that's the case, I don't necessarily think that we need to simply turn it over to the attorneys to do. What I'm going to suggest perhaps is that we compile our comments and then we identify a group of good citizens as a committee to take these comments and further review them as opposed to here at this meeting and decide among themselves as officers of this city whether it fits or not and change this document accordingly. Now once that's done, then it clearly goes back to the attorneys for review. The changes that would be put in there could say done in red. So if the attorneys have already passed judgment, for example, on everything that's not changed, then they don't have to review that again. My point is that a lot of good technical people could look at this document and add polish to it, and then allow the attorneys to be sure that it's all legally correct. Then once that's done, I would see that document going back to P&Z for their ratification, and then only would it come back to council. So that's what I'm looking at. Now maybe that's a much deeper pit than the rest of you are looking at, but that's the way I saw it when I went through all of these things. And keep in mind, these are made in good faith, and you'll hear it tonight. Now, my general sense is, instead of trying to go through all these tonight, is that we could maybe make overviews, and I'm prepared to make a few overview comments, if appropriate, of some of the things that concern me. And then we perhaps would go to this committee to adopt or review these.
can you give me roughly about 3 or 4 examples so that everyone will have an idea of what you...
Well, yeah. First of all, there's a general review for compatibility and consistency. We've got a general section, we've got a PUD section, we've got a T&D section. And we've got different definitions of dwelling in almost each of these. Even in the general section, we go between apartments and dwelling and multi-family dwellings. When I went through there, for example, I looked at apartment and I look at dwellings, and I'm trying to decide which is which. And they're really very compatible because the apartment is really a subset of the dwellings. So what we could do in terms of correcting or clarifying that is when we write our dwellings definition, we could put in parentheses where it's appropriate, paren, e.g. apartments, so that you know that this is exactly the same. You don't have to worry about it. Anybody who's trying to go through there knows that these two things tie together. So that's one thing. In terms of density, I see that we start off with a definition of density early on. We use density many times through this, but then it's only deep in the document that we get to net density. Now, this is an important distinction, as we all know. It's something that we've changed in the last year or so. Now, are we really talking just density by gross area or acreage? Or do we really, and when we say density and we're talking about acreage, or do we really want to be putting net density in there? I'm not sure we've caught all of these. When you get to net density in the back, it's actually about a paragraph about this big, trying to make sure it's all understood. But in the process of trying to do that, I think they got the definition wrong. So I think we would need to change that to be sure that that's right. We've got little things like, for example, a definition of a building line, just for an instance. It says building line equals setback line. Well, why don't you just say what that really means? In addition, to make it clear, because some people may not know what either of those things mean. You know, it's a line at which building can begin. These are little things, but I think they help with clarify this thing. There are some typographical errors in there, for example. Let's see if I can pick out just a couple. One here, when we're talking about dwelling units, in multifamily dwelling, it gets in here and it's talking about including condominiums with varying arrangements of party walls. I'm sure that's not what that means.
Party wall.
Party walls. Maybe they mean partitions, but it needs to be clarified. These little things, but this is necessary. There's some others if you like. Let's see what we got.
Try and find them, but see 2 or 3 more. Would either Ms. Morris or Mr. Barrow or Mr. Muhammad like to make any comments on this? Because I think you guys were the last ones who actually looked at this document.
I can clarify my role. My role was to take the document that I was provided, the one that was approved by P&Z, and to put it in ordinance form. And in doing so, I numbered it to be consistent with our titles because we're getting ready to codify all of our ordinances. I tried to remove duplication where there were provisions already in Title I or another title that addressed that subject matter, and a lot of times it was almost identical language, but I compared them to make sure I wasn't deleting anything. I didn't do any substantive changes, so what density is or net density or whatever, those, I understand that a lot of those definitions came from standards that are used kind of by planners. So those were, I didn't change that type of thing. I didn't change substance. I just tried to fit it into our code system, eliminate duplication, number it, and put it in a logical order, and make sure that we weren't repealing anything that we needed from the Unified Development Code that we now use, and the appendices to that, and our floodplain ordinances, because they're all in the same title, to make sure that they're all readopted, renumbered, and they all fit as one title. So I don't.
Mr. Barrow?
Well, the ordinance we've been working on, I looked, since November of '09. So it's been almost 4 years that we have had numerous public meetings, north, south, east, west, some in this fire station, that we've gone through this ordinance page by page, discussing it. Most of the ordinance and the language in it was as a result of community meetings, sitting with the council, sitting with the P&Z, going through it, deciding what the people wanted and what we wanted. And the actual language was drafted by Mark Balkin and Steve Villavasso, who are the two leading attorneys in the state of Louisiana when it comes to zoning. Both of them teach zoning classes at universities. Steve Villavasso is the zoning guru of the state of Louisiana. He teaches the planning classes that commissioners go to around the state, teaches a zoning class at UNO. He has written zoning codes for multiple cities across the state, including Covington's recent one. So we went through this word for word, and they did, getting everything as clear as they felt legally understandable, enforceable throughout this ordinance. And it's been several years. We've gone back over sections with council, with P&Z. We had our last workshop on February 28th, all afternoon in Crispinwood for council, P&Z, public. It went before P&Z in May and was unanimously approved. So, you know, there's, like Councilman Washington said, there's a couple of things in here that I don't necessarily agree with 100%, but that's a personal feeling. But it was the consensus of citizens, council, P&Z to go with certain recommendations in here. So, I mean, probably everybody in this room can nitpick a couple of things in here, but we had to go with what was the consensus and what people agreed upon, whether it was majority or majority rules kind of deal. So I just want to say I think it's been written to the best of its abilities, reviewed and authored and written by some of the best zoning experts in the state. Will you probably come in with a 99-page ordinance or 90-page ordinance with any city? Will you come back and have to amend some things? Yeah, there's always with any ordinance like this. We've had other ordinances that you probably didn't think of something, or you have a special case come back on that you'll have to go back and think and make changes to. That's with anything of this magnitude. Will we revise things in the future as something might come up that we need to change it? Sure. I mean, we've done that with other ordinances. But I just feel that, you know, we've had community input, we've had council input, P&Z input. The two best zoning attorneys in the state have, you know, reviewed this to the best of their abilities, every single page, and, you know, that's how it came to be. Like I said, it's been almost 4 years of work that we've come down to.
I would say in response to that, I fully respect this. I know a lot of good men have poured over this. I've also seen multiple reports many times that have been reviewed by a lot of people that still have needs for change. I'm simply giving you a few of these. Some of these, the typos, for example, I just cited one. I can cite a couple more.
Yeah,
They're
correct
there.
typos.
Well, but what I'm saying is all these people have overlooked that. And the definition of net density is wrong. You
Well,
know,
I'll disagree
What's
with you
wrong
on that,
about
that?
because
Have you read it?
we sat there
What's
with
wrong about
Mark
it?
Balkin and Steve Villavasso and went over that definition time and time again, so we were sick of it and finally got it the way they felt it was legally the best explained definition.
Well, it's possible I'm wrong, but we can stop and read it now if you like. But my point is that there are some things in here that need fixing. Now, this is a consensus, and it's up to this August board to make this decision. You can throw all these yellow stickers away, and I'll go home and do something else I enjoy doing. But I do think if you throw these away without looking at them, I think you're making a mistake. All I'm suggesting is that a qualified group of guys look at them, and if they think they're worthwhile, consider them. If they think it's trivial and superficial or whatever, or not necessary, then disregard them. That's all. I'm giving you the benefit of what I've done here. It's the only thing I'm doing. And I am interested in trying to get the best document. This is not criticizing anyone. I guarantee you, I've gone through reports many times and not seen errors. I've lived with them for years, and somebody points them out. So, you know, to find something in there is not surprising, and it doesn't reflect on the creators at all. In terms of, yeah, we can fix it later, yeah, you can, but if you've got a pile of them here now, I suggest it's worth looking at before we proceed. And that's my only case here. No criticism whatsoever here. So that's my point. And I know I have a pile of them here. So that's why I wouldn't want to bore you with doing all this tonight. If we have a group of guys who wants to go through them, and I'll sit with them. We can do that without wasting the time of this group. Then I would offer that as one option. So I'll sit down.
Well, let me make a small comment on this.
Yeah.
We have attorneys, whether they are professors or trial case attorneys, whatever, they all specialize, in one thing. My opinion is, it seems like what we're leaning towards is more of a technical writer. And with your engineering background, you're going to see certain things.
I'll acknowledge that. Yeah.
Worked in the plant for many years, and all of our startup catalogs, we had engineers, we had technical writers, and we had the people who knew how to start the plant up. And we gathered all that, and we had a good composite of what we need to do, and we still made changes. So Mr. Muhammad, you're the one who's going to have to live with this thing and tell everybody. I don't want to put you on the spot, but you showed up, so.
Last part.
I mean, David said it all. I mean, it might be some things in there that might need to be tweaked, but we've gone through it numerous times. And
let me ask you about this party wall.
I'm going to tell you, I question the party wall because I read it, not having participated in the meeting, so I said, party wall, what is that? It is a technical term that's used in planning, and here the legal dictionary says it's a partition erected on a property boundary. And there are some terms in there that I questioned myself. I said, what is this? But they had if they had an explanation for it and we could verify it by some other document, I left it alone.
I instantly back off. That's the way people want to write that. I guarantee you most people will not know that,
But the people that are looking at this are architects and planners,
Right.
and
Yeah,
so
it's kind of an
my
architecture.
terminology might be different, but the people that are working with this, it makes sense to them. And so some of the things I thought somebody typed this word wrong, they weren't in fact typed wrong. They said, oh yeah, we know what that is. So I did look them up, and we kind of had a little in-office workshop, and we looked things up to verify that we had things spelled correctly. And that, is it perfect? No. It was 100 and something pages when it came to me. And I can't say, I'm human. Everybody that's human, all the typists are human. So there could be typos. And I've asked everybody, you see a typo or whatever, please send it to me, we'll get it corrected. I have not received anything from anybody in that vein, other than Woodrow and David.
Well, you're receiving something here. I don't doubt that people have done their best effort. I'm simply offering you what I have. You
And
can accept it or you can reject it.
I'm happy to go through it, because if there is an error and we can take it out, I think that was, we were all trying to
some of the
do.
things that are in here.
Misspelled word
this
going to change the legal
document, I think-
definition of anything.
What?
A misspelled word going to change the legal definition of the whole planning and zoning thing?
Well, I tried my best to get the
Well,
misspelled
I'm just
words
saying, if
out.
we got typos or whatever, then, like I said, I mean.
Couldn't find it.
But I can guarantee there's not any in here.
Well, I think it's more to it than just typos.
You want to do us first?
Okay. Here's
I thought
my
you were gonna
question,
do
and
us
whether it's to the council or to P and Z. We stated in the council meeting that we wanted to send this back to P and Z to have them, what?
Okay, let me answer that, because I'm the author of it, I guess.
Yes, you and
For
Ms. Zena,
And
and were you on this?
this is one of the steps I don't necessarily agree with. If the planning and zoning, under normal circumstance, will recommend something to either be approved or disapproved by the council, the planning and zoning takes a document and they go through it and they have their meeting, a public meeting, make their comments, and they said, okay, we approve this, we're going to approve this for recommendation to the council. Then we take, okay, attorneys. In this case, 3 attorneys. Nothing bad about attorneys, but we take 3 attorneys, planning and zoning certified people, administrative staff, and we put these guys in a room and they make some changes, and when it comes to the council, it has amended. And I'm going, wait a minute. If this is amended, who made the changes? Because my thought process is it comes from the planning and zoning recommendation for approval. If you have to amend it, make changes or anything, well, we need to go back to the planning and zoning and let them make the recommendation again before it comes to the council. Because, as you say, the buck stops here. The council, the legislative body, vote on this, and that's supposed to be it. Any other changes is going to be amendments. So, if you make these changes, whether you change the title from UDC to comprehensive plan, make paragraph wordings, one word can change a whole paragraph. May, shall. Okay, so why not send this back to the planning and zoning? And that's why I made that statement. You got it.
Are we still sitting in public comment right now?
Yes, but I want to handle this as sort of informal because I don't want it to get out of hand, but I had to answer that.
Okay, well, because I got a lot of questions.
You're next.
I got several questions. So if we want to send this back to P&Z, it's been stated there was no substantive change to the ordinance from what P&Z said, other than legalese in it. Correct?
There's no substantive change. I mean, the setbacks are the setbacks, the density is the density, the number of buildings you can have, all those things are the same. The substance was not changed.
Okay.
There were, for instance, I can give you an example, there was a chapter or a section saying that there's a planning commission composed of 7 people appointed. Well, we already have that in Title I. And this council already adopted the rules for meetings for boards and commissions in Title I. So it didn't need to be in this ordinance because it already existed. So I took that out. And that was highlighted in the first version that you had. And then it was later removed after I verified that nothing was being left out. There are things like that. But that didn't change the substance. It didn't change who's on the Planning and Zoning Commission. It's just we already had ordinances that dealt with that. So if we had an ordinance in another section that dealt with that, if I was unsure, I left it. If I didn't know whether this was supposed to be in or out, I left it. I didn't take out anything that I wasn't sure and checked with everybody to make sure it wasn't changing the substance.
Okay, so my next is twofold question here. Any council members that are present at this moment right now, is there any substantive changes that you would like to make to the document that was presented to us?
You're getting way ahead of yourself. We're back on the public comments.
I wasn't finished with mine.
But you asking a question?
Yes, I am. I'm trying to get this thing going in the right direction here. And what my thing is,
we are going.
if this is wanting to be a substantive change meeting, then we can send this back to the P&Z
We're in the comment.
and get it done.
I want to hear what the audience has to say.
Are you going to send it back to me? Because if I'm not going to get my time to speak, I might as well go ahead and leave.
The council is going to speak when the audience is through. So,
well, I mean, you made several comments tonight. You respond to each one of these several times.
yeah, but you asked some questions.
And that's my right.
Ms. Kim, you had a comment?
Yes, I do. Well, now I want to add something else based on what you said. And just correct me if I'm wrong on this, but in the original draft, under individual mobile homes, it said lot area.
What page?
Page 94. This is just one
94.
example. It says,
I don't have a number.
I don't have a name.
What section?
Section C, individual mobile homes, page 94.
Well, she's referring to section
It's a draft.
18.1C.
Original draft.
On y'all's page, it would be 85 and 86.
Yeah. You guys don't have the original?
It's been changed, that's what the problem is, it won't line up.
Okay, just for instance, there it says lot area not less than 3 acres. But on the revised, which would be 18 C 3A, page 86. And, you know, this may be the same, I don't know, maybe a technicality, but it says lot acre, 3 acres. So it's exact 3 acres or 3 acres or more? I mean, that's just a,
They asked you to put a mobile home on 3 acres minimum. Correct?
The sentence before that says minimum requirements.
3 acres.
minimum requirements.
So A through F are minimum requirements. I mean, it could say, like I said, the first time, not less than 3 acres, but the word says minimum requirements. Essentially, it's the same thing.
So it has to be on 3
So it
acres
should
or
be
more.
minimal.
Right.
Okay.
Correct.
Well, minimum is in the sentence right before. Minimum is in the paragraph, and then the list follows.
Okay, my only question, and I'm gonna be honest, I haven't gone through the whole thing. It's pretty overwhelming. I tried to do the best I can with the time that I had. I was in a meeting all weekend, but probably the thing that I was concerned most about and had some questions was about the adult uses. So
We
that
didn't
was
change any words in there. We didn't touch that section.
What's that now?
We didn't change. That is as it came from P&Z.
Oh, no,
We
no,
didn't
no
change
change.
anything.
I
There's no
don't
change.
think there's a change.
That was actually going to be asked to, at the last council meeting, it was going to, if we would have went forward with it, it was asked to be amended to add in the central thruway
Okay. now-
area. It was going to be amended in the council meeting if we had went forward with the voting and everything, because I believe that is the only section that is left out at the moment.
As far as major intersections.
Yes, ma'am.
Location.
Can we let Tim finish asking, then I want to respond, I have an answer for you, but one minute.
Okay.
What page?
Page 8, you're 88, the revised 88, number 3, location. Okay, so just help me out here, where exactly can an adult use be?
Okay, very good question. Steve Villavasso and Mark Balkin were very careful on this section and how it was written because
There's a lot of
y'all
litigation.
help me get the right word which I'm trying to say.
It's a
You
first
have, it's
amendment.
a federal, you don't want to, you can't exclude them 100%. You're going to be in violation of federal guidelines in court cases. So Steve has done this in other cities. He's very careful on how it's done. So what they tried to do was, I don't want to use the word manipulate, but they looked at the city, they looked at the zoning classifications, and they tried to come up with the most restrictive places where it would still meet the law, where you're not banning them, but it would almost be virtually impossible to find a location for them to put one in.
Right.
So basically what I think what it came down was only like 3 or 4 places in the city, little dots, that nobody would want to put one there anyway, would have an extremely difficult time to do. They were very careful in that, and there was a subject of much discussion for them explaining how they came up with that. That we would be legal on it, but it would still be very extremely difficult for anybody to even put one there.
Okay, where are those 3 places? I guess that's what I'm asking. Not
I have
just
to go
like
back and
where.
look.
We went through a GIS exercise and went through all the parameters, and like David said, we can't exclude them out, but we made it very difficult. In those areas, we do have a map that we did do internally. It shows those areas, but like David said, they don't want to go in the wetlands. They don't want to go where they don't have access.
Do you know without the map? Or can
Well-
you tell me, or am I gonna have to look at the map, and where's the map?
Well, we have it, but we don't want to get out because then they're going to be looking at those places and say, well, that's where we want to go. So we don't want to get it publicized. I don't think we want to go that route.
The ordinance hadn't been passed yet, so somebody could turn in a request to do one there.
Or anywhere else right now.
Or anywhere
Right
else
now,
right now.
because this is pending, you're getting all sorts of requests for things that are not going to be allowed under here. We have a lot of things pending right now that people are trying to get in to avoid these provisions. So the longer it's pending, you're gonna have to live with those, even though they're not within the scope.
What you basically, what
I mean,
you,
I'm not trying to be ugly here, but.
well, I understand the question.
You
What-
don't
what-
know, or you can't tell me, or it's just shush, or.
Well, without actually measuring, but what
It's
you're
very
looking
limited
here,
places.
it can't be located within 1,000 feet of any property zoned, used, or planned, like in our master plan, for residences. So that means you can't be within 1,000 feet of any rural agriculture, R1, R2, R3, residential, anything for residential.
Okay.
And you need churches, schools, parks, or another adult use. But they may be in the B3, B4, B5. Well, that would be districts that would have to be zoned for B3, B4. So it's kind of like Woodrow said, where they end up, they try to get them by looking at our map. And like I said, you'd have to go through everything. It would be someplace like, 50 feet from a stream or a river where nobody could really build anyway. But you still have to legally leave some places open so that you're not challenged in federal court saying you're trying to do it. That's me.
To follow up on her question, she asked there, you said you can put them in rural areas. How, and that's a business, how can you put it in a rural area?
Okay.
If you read that, it says by all the different B and RA. I'm sorry, Brenda, but it's gonna follow up on her question.
You know,
It's that zone, but it can't be within 1,000 feet of those other areas.
The question being, though, how,
Councilman Cena was raising his hand. Is it okay? Yeah. I was at that meeting that night. If I'm not mistaken, with Chris, I just sat and listened. Big conversation. And all I'm gonna say is I totally understood what Mark and Steve were saying. And so I'm not going to say a whole lot because I don't want to be held accountable on that. But in other words, you can't say, no, you can't have it. Not in our city. Because if you do that, then
Your ordinance will be unconstitutional.
and I've
Correct.
heard Ms. Mars say before about you got people sitting in the background, not just about that, but other things, just licking their chops, like to introduce you to my lawyer. Okay? So I do understand about this that we basically had to do what was done. And so I sat there and I listened that night, and I totally I understand and I agree that this has to be in there, whether we like it or not. Okay, so I went home.
you know, I spent a lot of time on that section. Dr. Furley pointed out, you know, we can't ban it, but we can regulate it. And let me tell you guys, we can regulate it a lot better than what it's regulated right now in this. Because if you look at some other cities, I think they have a lot better regulation than what we put forth right here. And that's what all this is about, is maybe we can make this document a little bit better. So we may not have that opportunity to change it, come back and change it again. We're not criticizing, but there's many areas that in 2010 I did UDC Chapter 4 and 19. I spent a lot of hours. That's when I just got elected. I thought that would be a good thing. I wanted a couple things changed. One is the signage, 4x8 sign. It's in here. But I also put 300 feet. And as I look at Central as a whole, 300 feet may not be, that's only one football field. There's houses, so they're making their announcements to their neighbors, 1, 2, 3, maybe if I ask Woodrow what's the average, maybe 7 only. What if we made it like 2,000 feet, like some cities I found now? I didn't have the knowledge then, but I do have it now that's saying some cities have 2,000 feet from your property line, which would make it a lot better. And we could change that 300 to 2,000. I think we can. Now, unless an attorney says, it's unconstitutional to do that. Same thing with this adult. I feel like it would be better, and these are the cities, is restricted to the light industrial districts. And that's where we may want to change this to. And it's just a suggestion that I have that, yeah, we can't ban it, but we can regulate it better than this. And 300 feet's not too far. And that's what they have in this. And they put it in the middle of the street. You get a 4-lane, middle of the street, and you got 50 feet just wiped off right there. So I think you can regulate a lot better. And that's where maybe, not going back to the planning and zoning, but maybe go to a committee. RJ mentioned that. Maybe getting a committee, maybe the council can come up with a committee with P&Z, with school board, with citizens, with council, and go in and make these things. Yeah, David, 2009, a long time. I know y'all been working on it, but y'all try it as a councilman. Y'all try to look at our ordinances. Please do. They're not codified. They hadn't been codified since 2005 when we became a city. And we're just now working, trying to codify. Go look at any city out there and you can go right to your subject. You can't do that here. If you can, please tell me. I'm a councilman. I should know.
Can we get an iPad for that?
But anyway.
Any other?
Me? Okay, I just have a couple of things. The first thing is I would like to see us get away from the mandatory planned unit development. I know that's still in there, and I thought when we initially had that included in our ordinances, it was because everything was rural, and that when we got to this phase where we were going to actually adopt a zoning code and adopt a map, that we would do away with that mandatory PUD. In my estimation, what you're doing is you're going to all this trouble to create your zoning ordinance, going to all this trouble to create your map to say where you want these different zoning categories, and then you're taking away a developer's by right to develop. Let's say they could meet all the requirements of an R2 zoning or an RA zoning, and they can meet all the requirements of your ordinance. Instead of them being able to develop that by right in a simple process where they just submit a preliminary plat, then they do their construction plans, then they do their final plat, and they're done, you're putting this PUD on them, which is a much more costly document. It also gives council absolute discretion to approve it or disapprove it with absolutely no real substantive criteria for how they make that decision for approving or disapproving it. So I think you're just adding a whole lot of red tape on top of which is really not necessary in my opinion. The other thing, it's much more technical, is under the PUD approval. If you do like the PUD, and if everybody does, that's fine, leave it in there. But under the approval process for that, when you get to final development plan stage, this is page 54, 55. The construction plans are included in the final development plan approval. The way it works now, I've been working for civil engineers forever. You do your preliminary approval, get your concept plan approved, which is just your zoning, your densities, where your pond's going to be, that sort of thing. Then you come back with your final development plan, which actually includes the lot layout, street layouts, all the details. Then, once that's approved,
you get your engineers, okay, run with it, let's do construction plans. Construction plans are costly, guys, like 10% of the total cost of constructing that subdivision. You're talking tens of thousands of dollars to do construction plans. It doesn't make sense to me if that's what this is asking for. Now, it just says construction plans including buildings, landscaping, lakes, and other site improvements. But, I mean, I assume that means complete construction plans for whatever you're going to build. You're taking a final development plan phase that might cost a developer $8,000 to $10,000, and you're turning it into a $75,000 phase, at which you still have the full discretion to say no. So, I don't think that's very wise to put someone in that kind of position. What was my other point with that? Oh, also, construction plans have to go through being approved by DPW. Where does that fit into this? Do they go through that whole entire process, which could take months sometimes? It's a give and take thing. They check all the drainage inverts and all the calculations and all that. It takes months to approve those things. Do you approve the construction plans before the council gets to see them? If so, then if the council wants to make some little minor change in the final development plan, which is your right and which is something you should have the ability to do, which you do according to this, then do they have to go back and reapprove the construction plans? It just doesn't make sense. I would like to see that part, construction plans, taken out of there, would you?
David, hold on a second.
What page is that on?
55.
Muhammad, you have something?
I don't think that's the intent of the way it is now for construction plans to be approved by council. I think what is submitted to council is under C1, A, B, C, D, E. I think that's what is submitted to council.
Okay.
Construction plans are, to my understanding, the way it's drafted now, it would be after council approves the final development plan, then it's submitted, the construction plans are submitted to planning staff and DPW for review, just like it is now.
Okay, good. Does that make sense to you in here, the way it's written?
Well, maybe because I've had some
Because
background.
you know that's what it's supposed to be. Good.
Is that correct, David? Yeah.
Good. Okay, great. So I said all that for nothing, but thanks.
This is more a theoretical problem than anything else. It's a timing issue. I think once we pass this, as I understand, this is going to apply to our new zoning map, which is not published yet. So I would suggest that this document can't become active until the approval of the zoning map. So the effective date of this should be the effective date of the zoning map. If we do anything else, we've wiped out our current zoning. We have a zoning map and zones that now don't have definitions attached to them. And we have a B5, but there's no B5 property in Central. So I'm hoping we can coordinate the passing of the zoning and the effective date of this to be the same moment.
Let me let Mr. Muhammad explain this whole process about the map, the text versus the map, how it's going to be handled, because I had basically the same question.
After speaking with Steve and Mark, we all agree that that's how it should be, that the zoning, the effective date of the zoning text should coincide with the effective date of the zoning map.
But why aren't we looking at the zoning map?
Okay, hold on a second.
The reason why, because we've gone through several iterations already just based internally on the zoning map and the zoning text. For instance, if you all decide that y'all don't want any B4 zoning districts, that means we have to revise the zoning map not to include B4. We had to be definite and have consensus on the zoning districts, the language that each zoning district requires. Once we have that approved by you all, then we can go towards a map consistent with the approved zoning text. We didn't want to keep going back and forth between the zoning ordinance and the zoning map, which we have done just internally. It gets it more difficult if we had done it the other way around.
And in this particular document that we have, shouldn't we put something that all new cases, once this is approved, will be based upon, or before it's approved, should be based on this.
That's my opinion, and I think that's what we should do. And I think that's what Mark and Steve have agreed to.
What was that again? Can you explain what you just said?
That all new land development applications be consistent with the adopted zoning text. For instance, if you want to rezone your property, it should be consistent with the new code.
Once the new code and the map are issued.
Not the map.
No.
No, in the interim of the zoning map and the zoning text,
But now, haven't we taken commercial and put it into 6 different categories instead of 1 or 2 or 3? So how do we know which category this piece of property falls under? It's a commercial piece of property, but it's C2. It's not B1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. Now it becomes
New
Today, it would be only new
applications.
applications to rezone and new
Oh, for rezoning.
applications for
Correct.
plans, like.
Okay.
exactly what we're doing
But
now.
we're applying for a permit on a current piece of property that you're not asking for rezoning. You're
Correct.
still working under C1 or C2.
That's correct.
Correct, unless
Okay.
you still have to submit a plan. Like if it's a PUD and you still have to submit a plan, it would go under the new text. So that language after this discussion, it will go in the ordinance portion. The effective date in the proposal that we had in the council packets was October 1st. But it will have language that will address the effective date in terms of new applications and the new map.
Okay.
And our goal, hopefully, if we get the zoning ordinance adopted,
Can speed up that
speed up the
process.
zoning map, go before the zoning commission the next month, for instance, and go through all this again. But that's the goal.
Mr. Easley.
First, I'd like to say I'm kind of ashamed of myself for not being involved in this stuff. The first I got involved was at the Planning and Zoning May meeting, and that's kind of bad. But at that night, as I spoke, I said, how can you develop this here without having a map? But after a lot of time thinking, it's the right thing to do. You should do your procedures first. Then if you want to look at something and argue about it, you can't argue with 2 different arguments. You got to get one down. And then if you want to do something with the other one, you do it there. So I'll agree with that. The biggest thing I got involved for was because of the school enrollments. And I saw a big crisis happening there. I got the things I believe y'all had Neil Schaefer to do, show the population growth, student growth, and all like that. So I went to the 2017 and I added up the student growth. Come up to a number. I went to David, I said, is this what we're supposed to have in 2017? He said, yeah. I think we were 12 already over in 2013, we 12 over. So if the school is that far up, your traffic and your population is that far up. I see a big need for this. We want it to be correct. I will give it to the city. We have a mechanism in place to control our growth. We've got to use it. I think this only improves it. Are there things, anytime you do something, you're going to have it. I would like to see it worked out as fast as possible and get in there, because people, and if I want to develop, I'm going to be doing the same thing. I'm going to be trying to get on the wire and get in and get mine done full time. And that's business, and I don't blame them at all. But I got 4 things here that I just want to say. It's a lot of good in here. Following up on her thing is with a PUD. If you following all, now instead of 8 houses, it's 15 lots in a thing. If you're following all the mechanics of what they say you're supposed to have, why do you still have to have a PUD? Why wouldn't it be automatic to do it? And I'm not saying that you don't do it. You can have a reason for doing it, but how can you come back and say, no, you can't do this here subdivision if you're meeting all the requirements of what's here? You're the attorney, you might can answer that. I don't know that answer. That's something that y'all kind of need to work out. Otherwise, if I'm doing it, and I'm not a developer, but I'm doing it and I meet all the requirements, and you say, well, no, you can't do it, where do you go with that? That's problematic. The 4 things, y'all, and then I'll get back, is on page 53. Down at the bottom, down there, proposed developments over 50 residential units. I would like to see the traffic and the school impact study to have shall wrote in there, not just open it, somebody's discretion. I think you need to be specific that you want it. When you go to
What line was that?
It'd be number 1 and 2 down at the bottom of page 53. I think you shall have it, not just, it's up to them at their request. Somebody wants to request it. Over on page 86 now. And this is to follow up on what Ms. Fraley was talking about. On a mobile home, single use, and the only place you can put it is in a rural area. When you do it with what's in here, then you're creating a permanent mobile home spot. You can never do anything else with it. Because you can't come back and build a house on it, because a house requires 250 feet. You can do this here, a mobile home on 100 feet. So nothing can ever be built there now, except a mobile home can stay on that lot. Now, if you go down through there and somebody's got a long strip of property and got wetlands on the back or something, they can go down through there and divide these things into 100-foot lots and have, sewer lines coming out at 100 foot down through there. But the worst thing I see is you're limiting it to only a mobile home when you approve that lot. And I think that's wrong. I think it ought to be 250, because a lot of people, as I did, moved the mobile home in first, built my house behind it, and moved it out. This way here, if you put it 250, they can build a house later on if they want to. The 100 foot is kind of bad in my, you're limited, and nothing else can ever be built. Because it's rural, you can't fall into any of the categories. The other thing was to kind of follow up on page 88, and this was on your adult houses. And the question I asked, is that a business, and can you put a business in a rural area? Zone rural. No. So does that need to be there or not?
Businesses will only be in B1 through B5.
But it says NRA there. See that NRA there? That's the part the question I had. Can you put it in a rural area?
Probably not, because the rural area.
Why would it have?
You can only have a home-based business.
Right.
So that could probably come out.
That should come out, I would think so. That's what I saw.
Because the rural area would be
The ORG.
an area, the RA is an area that's recommended for residences. So
I think that
you
needs
could be
to come
within
off.
1,000 feet within it. That probably could come out. I mean, I'll double check with Mark if the white was there, but it probably, the way I'm reading it again, it could come out. Unless there was a reason for him putting it in there. Because you're within the residential, and it says you can't have one within 1,000 feet of the property plan for residential. So, right here. I'll double check. But can I respond to one of Louis' questions?
Yeah.
I will concur with you on page 86, and I think that was a catch that we had talked about on page 86 on line 17 on the 100 foot of frontage. I think that's what it currently is, but you're correct. The rural agriculture district, as it says on lines 12 and 13, it says it's permitted in the rural agriculture provided meets all the requirements of said district and meets the minimum requirements. Well, the requirements of the rural agriculture that we agreed upon was 3 acres minimum width 250. So I can agree with on line 17 changing that lot width to 250, because that is the boundary of the district. So that's
That is.
What about our shells and them other two?
That's up to them.
Okay, that's up to y'all. Okay. That's
Line 17.
past that, I want to say, I guess, when this thing was ready to go to press, as you want to call it, and ready to prove it, is when everybody woke up to it. And like I say, I got it on in May. And I'm really ashamed to say that, but that's because of the school thing is when I got involved. I would hope that y'all could look, if everybody wants it right. Nobody's saying people screwed up doing it. When you do anything, anybody, you got to change. If people want to look at this and try to get it a better thing, I would hope that y'all would put a group together and as fast as possible and do it. Get it done to work people's satisfaction and get it back where we can get this passed, because as a total thing here, I think it helps the city. It reinforces what you got. And I think it'll help a developer, because he can look, they got a calculation sheet, he can go and look and put it on there. And this is what you're gonna do. If you're in the R1, this is what you can have. There's no loosening up. Changing this, can I put this many houses or what? It pretty well tells you what you can do. And I think any developer would want to know, if he's buying a piece of property, what can I put on it? So I think it helps the developer. I think it helps the school, to help, and the people driving around out here, the population growth. And I think some people don't believe we have a population growth problem. I do. I think it's happening fast and fast a lot. And I would hope that y'all would, David, Pete, all the different people that needs to be involved, y'all could get a group together, do an all day or all nighter, whatever it takes, and what they say, get her done. And I think it needs to be done. Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Will brought up an unintended consequence with the mobile home thing, and I think that's a good point. And it just made me think about something else. And I don't, if this answer is out there and already solved, I'm good with it. Betty and Jim bought 2 acres on Hubbs Road, thinking, you know what, someday we're retiring right here. Or they got given 1.5 acres from Grandma. That's where we're going to retire. And we pass all this zoning, or somebody's got a trailer sitting on 1 acre. And they say, well, eventually someday we're going to build a house here. And they come and say, well, we're rural agriculture. We've only got 2 acres. We want to build our house. Are they prohibited?
Good question. What do you do if, what he's saying, if somebody already owns that piece of property and got a mobile home on it and wants to build a house now? That's a good question.
Grandma gave me that property to retire on. That's where I'm going. What do we do? Well, I bought that property as my retirement home 20 years ago. Now we're ready to retire. What do I do?
Waiver?
Have we got a provision for a waiver for a pre-existing? I think maybe there's some place we need to put in saying, as of this date back, if you own the property, yada, 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 you know. Because honestly, somebody who's got 1 acre on Hubbs Road, you have now made the value of their property 0.
Would that fall under the Board of Adjustments?
No, because it's written, remember we had in this room, we had that discussion where we went over chapter 18 about 1.5 years or so ago.
And we was talking about it.
And that was all the motion and
Allow
stuff
what?
right here in this room, and it was very clearly agreed upon by everybody that they did not want the Board of Adjustments to have the authority to waive that acreage, because they know they'd be getting waivers every month. So that's why it was written in here that the Board of Adjustment cannot
I
waive
didn't know if a
that.
construction waiver could be added into the Board of Adjustments. In other words, you've got X amount of time to construct this house and have this trailer removed.
I think if anyone took the city to court over this, owned that property since before you changed the rules, I think they win. So why don't we just go and be friendly to the people and say, you had your 1 acre, as of this date, you're grandfathered in, you can build a house there. Something to think about.
Okay. Wayne?
The other thing is, I would like to hear the answer to Mr. Will's question about a PUD, about why it's being left in. If there's an answer forthcoming.
You want to make a comment, Dave?
Well, I guess I can address it. Number one, right now it's 8 units or more has to be a PUD. We agreed to go up to 15 units. That way it gives property owners, if you're doing 14 or less, you can just do a conventional subdivision and just make sure you meet the lot requirements, you meet the rules. I think with the PUD, and that's kind of come from people in the community and our track record, I think the PUD has been extremely successful and perceived well by the citizens of the community, in the fact that, you know, you will have to set aside a certain percentage for green space. You know, you'll have to show amenities. So when you get the bigger subdivisions, you know, you can get more things out of the developers, and it's not necessarily just an automatic approval. Lots of other cities, you know, are looking at PUDs, and it honestly has, you know, helped us with the design of it. You know, let the planners have a look at it. You know, I mean, it's like right now, and that's one thing I was going to bring up tonight. we technically right now have 4 pending subdivisions ready to come before us with over 300 lots, including 2 that might be on the November agenda. And people are trying to, just like somebody just said, Mr. Wheeler, or somebody just said, everybody now has realized, oh, this is deferred, I was waiting, but now they're deferred, let me hurry up and get my application in. And every one of them are the cookie cutter lots, the straight street, the small rectangular lots, no green space. Oh, they'll put a little in the back corner, but no creativity at all. The PUD just encourages you, when you get the larger developments, to have some creativity, you know, and be able to do these things. And I think that the density calculator, which is on the last page, that's going to, I think, address some concerns that if you follow what this density calculator tells you, by, you know, taking out the wetlands, the detention pond, the street right away, all that, and giving you that net density, it helps us get a more quality development. And, you know, you do have some rules that they can still apply, and if they're meeting that, then it should, you know, meet the code requirements, and it should be approved. So I just think, you know, the PUD kind of saves us in a way, you know, for larger scale developments, and lets you plan on that.
Let me say, I don't have a problem with the PUD, and y'all approving or what have you. It still goes back to the density requirements of R1, R2, or rural, right, David?
That's correct.
Changing a PUD doesn't change.
But like when you have just a regular subdivision, like 14 or less, there's no requirement in there to have green space or a park or amenities. You know, so you could technically, if you didn't have the PUD ordinance, somebody could go put in 150 lot subdivision, cookie cutter lots, as long as they met the lot requirements, and you couldn't tell them, hey, we'd like a park here, or we'd like landscaping here, or green space. It just, you know, it brings in the, like I said, the cookie cutter bland developments that we're trying to get away from and have some more creative designs brought into the city.
With like an R1, 2 lots per acre. No matter if you're in a PUD or not in a PUD, you got to take out your roads, you got to take out your retention ponds and all that to get you net deal, right?
And that's net density, that's
Right.
new, yeah.
But that's the number of lots, not 2 per acre. They can condense those
compact
down.
them.
They can compact those down.
You're looking at the whole tract. You're looking at the
You're just looking at the
whole
number
subdivision.
of residents.
So they could be more compact than,
Right, but in the whole thing,
In the
they
whole-
go on net density, right?
Correct.
If you've got 50 acres and you've got 25 acres of pond and stuff, you've got 25 acres left, then you can put 50 homes in, right? And they still have to have the 125-foot frontage.
No, sir.
no.
No, sir.
There's a little variation in the density calculator based on amenities. You can reduce that a little bit, not a whole lot. I don't know the percentage right offhand, but you can go a little less than the minimum lot requirements, but it's not to the next
But that's what
zoning
you're-
district.
That's what you're giving them. You're letting them increase their density.
And a bonus for amenities.
For a bonus for them giving you a park, green space, and all kind of
It
other.
costs developers to add those extra amenities, so it's just for us to compensate that for extra density.
I know it's gonna change, but you're gonna start out with the basic, what's, R1, 2, and
Right.
3, and those little things give you a little extra stuff. It's not much.
Right.
But clarify this for me, this is the way I understand it, is that the density is the number of residences in there, not that, and it takes away as far as the 2 houses per acre. In other words, you can condense that down to wherever you want. It just limits you to the number of residences you can have. Is that, am I right on that? That's the way I was understanding it.
You basically
Right,
number
you
of
could
homes
have
on the whole
more on
property.
an acre, but you're gonna have green space.
Oh, well, I
That's what
understand that, but all I'm saying is, I think Mr. Will is saying that even that, you still, if you got 25 acres, he's saying you still got to have
You're gonna get
only
50
2 houses per acre.
You're
is
gonna
what
get
he's saying.
50 homes in there, and I thought you had to stay with the same lot frontage. And I
If
think,
you said you got 50 acres, you're saying you're gonna have 100 homes.
no, that's net I'm talking about. After you take out the roads and the ponds and all that, and you got 50 net acres,
That's
you can
correct.
have, 25 net acres, you can have 50 homes.
So it's 2 residents per net acres?
Correct.
Per net acre.
Okay, that's good.
Per net acre.
But you said, Woodrow, that it has a little factor in there that
Based on
reduces-
amenities. Based on amenities.
The definition of net density is on page 11, and I thought it stayed the same. I thought it was better for us because it took the 100 acres or 50 acres and they only built on 25, because of the ponds and all that other. And that's what I got out of the definition of net density on page 11.
So you based it on the 25 that was left, not the whole 50
That's right,
acres.
and that's what, right now, they can do it on the whole thing, is that
That's
correct?
correct.
That's why this here is good.
That's right, that's what I'm,
You're reducing
You're
it.
reducing it.
And this net density must apply to every subdivision, every development. Whether it's
15.
rural or whether it's
but,
B1 or whatever.
Correct.
If you look at that
15 units
last
or
page where you're calculating, if you look there, they tell you a lot size on each one. It can only be that, and then it figures out what your depth should be. They tell you it's 125, 75,
Right.
and 60.
and you're saying it changes though?
I didn't see where it could change.
Even if it's not a PUD, they'd still have to meet the net density though.
It's
Either
a,
way, they gotta be net density.
it's a factor in the, you have to actually play with the Excel spreadsheet to see the difference. It's kind of hard to see it on paper, but
Yeah, it's hard to understand, that's my whole problem is what,
Isn't it what, even what, on this last sheet back here, you gotta stay with those sizes right there? Look at the last sheet.
It says so.
right.
when you say last sheet, what page is it?
But it could be
Oh,
higher.
here.
It says there, 125, 75, and it actually figures your depth of your lot for you. To me, you gotta stay with that.
He's saying it only goes like 25 acres.
That's the minimum,
Yeah.
but it could go out more.
I think what it'll let you do is it'll let you go in, if you start getting some extra acres and things, it might give you another lot or two.
Correct.
But you're gonna have to decrease your depth of your lot then.
Yeah.
That's what it does.
Correct.
Keep you maintaining your front lot.
125 feet.
You gotta keep that.
That's what,
But your depth, if you give so many more acres here, you're gonna gain maybe a house or two. They don't gain much on top.
So that could be a little bit different, but it's not going to be
If
much.
you do that,
Right.
then your depth of your lot's gonna change. Is that right?
Right.
That's right.
That's what it's going to calculate the square footage.
Yeah.
I thought
Right,
everything
it's
was.
going to have something to say.
Yeah, Wayne Messina has the floor.
Okay. I want to go back to an earlier comment and just make a statement. Let's say that you've got an area that's zoned and you have all of the regulations. And let's say that the most that a contractor or a developer could put in their houses-wise would be, we'll make up a figure, 32 houses. Okay? And they go spend the $10,000 and whatever. And they go to the planning and zoning and they want to build a subdivision with 49 houses. Knowing that the regulations, the zoning, calls for X number of houses. The way I see that, that's not planning and zoning's fault, that developer or that contractor put that money out, or the city council. It's not those two groups' fault. And so if I'm a developer and I want to take that chance and I want to spend that money, then I do it. And if it's rejected, well, then I knew going in what the regulations were. And I'm just saying this for myself. I think that's where sometimes that we get a bum rap that we're not being fair with some developers or contractors, whatever the case may be, when I don't see it that way. I just don't. They come in, they're going to do this, they're going to do that, they're going to do this. When it clearly states that the available usable land, they can only develop 32 houses. And they come and they present to us, planning and zoning and council, for 49 houses or 52 houses. And, well, yeah, but I'm going to put this beautiful park in and we're going to do this and we're going to do that. And from years back, I do understand that there have been situations where it was approved and we still didn't see the beautiful park and so on and so forth. So that's just a little statement that I want to make on that point.
I just had a clarification. Woodrow or David, one, is the PUD requirement also going to be required for R2 and RA? It doesn't specifically say it in the ordinance.
Anything under 15 now?
The R1, R2, and R3, it should all be in their definitions that anything over 15.
It's not. Look under R2 on page 23. It doesn't say. It does say any use permitted in R1 district. But then under R3, it says any use permitted in R2. However, any proposed development of 15 or more residential units must receive conditional use as a PUD. So I just wondered if that was
Tell me which page.
That is.
All right, the R2 is on page 23.
23.
What's happening is, if you look, yes, on page, page 23 starts with R2, chapter 4.
Right.
Reading, I said it went back to R1 district.
And it says, under section 4.2, all conditional uses in R1.
Right.
And
Permitted uses also.
R1, R1 section 3.2 conditional uses E, line 23 says planned unit development. So that means.
But it doesn't say that they're mandatory for 15 or more, unless you're just assuming that the permitted uses in R1 is the same. But then I'm just curious why the difference. Then look at R3, David, on 24. It actually does say, however, any proposed development of 15 or more.
He brought it back here.
That might just be because it's
Okay,
attached.
hang on.
3 has it.
Okay, wait, we've got another typo, and that was a good catch. All right, hang on.
And then under RA, I don't think it says.
Okay, it's a
either.
type, okay, that's a correction we'll have to make if we catch on page 24, line 19, section 5.2, says all conditional uses permitted in R2, however, any proposed development of 15 or more. Okay, wait a minute, I'm getting confused now.
Yeah, no.
All right, permitted uses.
It is confusing.
You got permitted uses and conditional use, 5.1 and 5.2, both say that, and that's in R3. R2,
R2 just left it out altogether.
Yeah.
Should be the same on all three.
It should be included on R2.
Yeah, it should be in R2, it should be in there.
It should be, but it's not in R2.
Just for clarity, if nothing else, and
Yeah.
maybe implied.
Because I think where it says is any use, all right, I'm looking on page 23 under chapter 4, single family residential, section 4.1 and 4.2, all conditional uses in the R1, and then when you look in R1, it defines planned unit development. Okay, hang on, here we go. Here we go, page 21, I'm getting there. Section 3.1, line 32, permitted uses. Any proposed development of 15 or more residential units must receive conditional use as a PUD. So that's what, on page 23, line 22, all conditional uses permitted in R1.
Or any permitted uses.
Or any permitted uses.
Yeah,
So, yeah,
I think it's implied.
Yeah,
I just
we
think
need
it would
to
make
correct
more
that.
sense to make it really
That was a good catch.
make
That was a good
sense if that is the case.
Somebody making it. Sure, it's making it.
Would it be fair to say that all PUD determinations still have to meet the underlying zoning of that area? In other words, a PUD in a rural agricultural, whatever you call it, R3, is still going to have to meet one house per 3 acres.
I think that's what it's supposed to be.
Is that true?
In the R3, you don't have the 3 acre in the R3. The R3 is actually the
Rural agriculture?
The rural agriculture, all right. You're correct. In a rural agriculture district, because that's the big areas, you can't do a PUD or subdivision in those. You will have to rezone. If it's in RA,
you will have to get a rezoning to either R1, R2, or R3.
Right.
And then
Okay.
you'll have to do it as a PUD.
That's
The
why it's not
R1, as Nathan explained a number of times, that category is almost like a holding pattern because those are areas that they kind of went on the city for the most part, and you find
You mean
the
RA? You mean RA?
In
RA, what did I say?
R1.
All right, RA, yeah, RA. That you may not have the infrastructure, the sewer, the water, etc. So they kind of made all those areas RA, rural agriculture. So if you wanted to develop a subdivision in those, you would have to ask for a rezoning to R1, R2, or R3. And then if it's 15 or more lots, you would have to develop it as a PUD.
Well, the same question. In R3, the underlying zoning is 1 unit per half acre under R3?
R3 is the,
8 units.
I'm sorry,
R1, R1 is two lots per acre.
R2 is
minimum lot size half an acre.
Can a PUD have it could be more dense than the underlying R1 zoning?
Very low.
Very little. That's where the zoning density calculator comes in,
Okay,
and you
so
can
we're-
they'll plug in some numbers, and if you give more amenities than what's required, you can get a density bonus. But it's also in the formula that your percentage of the lot that you shrink cannot exceed a certain amount. So it's only a very small amount would you be able to change the lot
It's not
size.
just in the calculator, it's actually in the verbiage of the ordinance that ties it to this, correct?
The ordinance refers to the density
Okay.
calculator in each section.
It does.
And then
Yes.
the calculations that underlie this calculator, are they also published?
They will be posted on the website once it's finalized. It's in an Excel sheet, and you plug in the numbers in the box
Okay.
as is indicated below it. It's going to be a live calculation.
But this is the ordinance.
Yeah.
Shouldn't there be the actual calculations underlying that spreadsheet? Shouldn't they be part of this ordinance? Because this ordinance, you go change the spreadsheet, you change the ordinance in effect.
Well,
I think the definition tells you that you have to take out the wetlands, take out the
Okay.
infrastructure.
So the calculations are all in the language. Okay, thank you.
I've got a question. I don't know if you have the answer yet. And it's about urgency. I understand 4 years. But in that 4 years, Mr. Will can correct me, I would guess that our population in our school system has grown about 1,000 students. Mr. Will? I roughly, don't hold me to it. So there is a sense of urgency to get this done. Somebody mentioned technical writers a while ago. I have a brother-in-law that's an engineer. He was a technical writer, so I didn't understand all of that, but a lot of what I'm hearing is of almost a technical nature, and we're getting into a discussion of, what is the term, minutiae, the nuts and bolts of this thing. It may need to be cleaned up. It may be legally already jiving, but the technical part, maybe all of the planning and zoning ordinances or that we already have. Sure, we've had these, but they've been here and here, and you're talking about codification a while ago, of bringing it all where it's on one menu. You don't have, I hate it when I go to a restaurant and they give me 7 menus. No, so I can understand that. And I think there is a certain urgency to this, even though it's been 4 years. But as Will has said in the past, I've heard him say, we're one big apartment complex from busting our school system and really overcrowding it. And so this document is essential. And I don't know. The question is, how urgent is this? And what I'm seeing is, and I haven't read it, is it's of a technical nature. A lot of these things have been discussed tonight. And how urgent is this? Do you have an answer?
I think it's very urgent. It's one of the reasons why we called for a quick meeting, because I would still like to see this follow the process of going through and the council voting on this within the next 35 days, I think it was. But we talk about Central busting the school system open. I've never heard anyone say that Central school system goes outside of Central. If anyone, I'm just answering a question. If anyone talked to the councilman that's outside of Central school system, and what are they doing? I don't need an answer. I'm just laying it out there. But the technical writing, the technicalities, we're only doing this because this is something that I think the last move before we finalize it. We're not asking for 90 days. I mean, if we really wanted to, we could have our councilman who specializes in moratoriums, but put a hold on it all.
I can do
Okay?
it. I can do it. Sherry can help me.
Yeah. Okay. So that's our last stoppage, is to call out our moratorium writer. But it is very urgent, and I don't want to drag it out. We want to finalize this. If there are any other comments, I think we got 2 in the back and 2 or 3. And what I want to do is to wrap this thing up and get the council to make comments, because we could probably stay here for another 2 to 3 hours. And I have an opinion of how I would like to see it go, and they can make theirs, and we can all leave. Okay. Ms. Kim, ladies first.
I think there's some fear when we say moratorium that we're going to run the developers off.
They'll be back.
Yes, people are dying to get in Central. I mean, that's why we have overcrowding at the school, because as many problems as we have, people still do not want to be in East Baton Rouge. And so, I'm not suggesting that we do that for 3, 4, 5 months, but if we can't get it done before then, let's do it. And like you said, get it done. I know nobody wants to meet the next few weeks, once a week, twice a week, or whatever, but it would only be for a small period of time, and then it would be done and over with. But let's not worry. I know we have these pending, and that kind of scares everybody. So if we need to, do the moratorium or whatever, but they're going to wait around. They're going to be back. Now, no, I don't think anybody's gotten so ticked off they've left and went and built.
Okay. Next, Mr. Harris.
No, I got my questions answered. Thanks.
Okay.
One of the things that I'm late to the game here, like Mr. Wells said, a little bit earlier, I'm kind of particular to the discussion about the subdivisions and kind of how they're controlled because of what happened in our particular subdivision. And I'll tell my wife all the time, I'm like, the biggest thing that concerns me about the city of Central is that my kids are not going to be able to go to school here by the time they get ready to graduate, because the schools are going to be overrun and overcrowded. Who knows what comes with that population growth. Right now, we've got some of the best schools, definitely the best schools in the state, probably in the nation. So every time we do something for the school, I tell her, we need to make a donation to the private school as well, because one day we may very well need it if we don't control the population and the growth in Central, so we can control our schools and have good schools for our kids. Because when we have 50 or 60 students crammed in the classrooms that we've got right now, or 15 or 20, they're not going to get the quality education they do. So some of the ways we do it, I'm loving what I'm hearing about controlling the growth, and like David said about the cookie cutter, style neighborhoods like mine has become. But one of the things that I noticed is absent on page 55, line 26, it says, it's talking about covenants, neighborhood covenants, right? Because that's kind of the selling point when you're going to build a neighborhood. Hey, this is the type of development I'm going to have, these are the amenities I'm going to have, and it kind of sets the standard for the neighborhood, right? But what it says is, said covenants shall not be recorded without written approval of the city attorney, but they're submitted to the city attorney for review and approval. Well, I'm assuming that is for a legal review, right? Because if they say I'm going to put one crepe myrtle in the front yard and a mailbox, if it's legal, I'm assuming that's a legal review. But is that the kind of home that we really want built? You know, I would love for everybody in Central to have a home that's twice the value of mine. You know, that would tickle me to death. And I would love to have every home in Central built by builders that are here. I would love for their air conditioning to be put in by the HVAC guys that are here, the framers to work in Central. But I can tell you what's going on in development right now. There's one United States citizen in there, and he's the supervisor. They're not eating lunch here. They didn't buy a 204 in Central. They didn't buy a screw, a nut, a bolt. They're not going to lunch down the street. There is nothing good for Central that's going on right now. We're not getting one penny from that. Are they destroying our roads? Yeah. They're running concrete trucks up and down the road. You know, is the property value of my home significantly less? Yeah, so was everybody else that was in there before. So some of the things I think we could do, I went to Zachary and I just looked to see what they did, and I'm sorry I didn't print out a copy for everyone. But in Zachary's it says, for the Property Owners Association is required for every development. It also says that the city attorney shall record documents for the or review the documents for the following provisions. The membership is mandatory. Property Owners Association has lien rights, which we don't have under our current covenants. It sure would have been nice to know that, because a guy comes in and parks in his yard. Sure, I can send him a letter, but I can't do anything else about it. You know, there's nothing that can be done. It shall be permanent. And it also has to be released to the homeowners, you know, at some period during the development, whether it's 80% or 90% complete or whatever the case may be. It goes further to say city enforcement, not of the deed restrictions themselves. If I park in my yard and I've got a complaint, but the city, if the homeowners association is not maintained, the city can take it over and hire a company to maintain the homeowners association and the covenants of that neighborhood at a reasonable rate, and collect the dues from the homeowners association. So they can maintain, the city can actually maintain the integrity of the neighborhoods, which will stop exactly what's happening in my subdivision right now. Another thing too that I don't think we addressed at all, maybe we do, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but let's say the developer comes in, he sells you on the idea he's going to build a neighborhood. He goes to planning and zoning, he says, look, I'm building these incredible homes, right? They're going to be $400 a square feet, going to have granite this thick in them. So he comes in, everybody buys off on it. He walks to the city attorney. They are reviewed, but not recorded. He gets his approval. He throws them in the trash when he walks out the door. He goes and builds 1,800 square foot, just cookie cutter homes. Everybody's the same. Front loading garage. You got the one crepe myrtle and their mailbox, and that's all they've got. What happens? Nothing. Because in the subdivision that I live in right now, when the developer came in, the tract builder came in, he was changing the door styles and changing some other things that affect the overall aesthetics of the neighborhood. As far as landscaping, something that simple, right? It says 60% of the plants and the number of plants will be planted in the front yard. We did that. Obviously, the remaining 40% get planted in the rear of the yard. We just doesn't do that. So we said, hey, you're not following the deed restrictions. He said, either I'll do what I want or I'll throw them all away. What do you guys want to do? So what do we do? Well, like I say, Zachary has already taken care of that for their citizens. It's in their code. You can look it up online just like I did. You can go right to the neighborhood, to their website and look it up. And I think it's a super place to address some of those things, to take care of the biggest investment we've all got is our home, or I say we've all got, the majority of us have is our home. Some others may be in a different boat. There's also some language over here, just a page or two, where it talks about a T&D. And we get very in detail about how we're going to control that, how we're going to maintain the integrity of that development. But we don't carry that into these subdivisions that we're talking about that may have 300 homes in them. If they've just got homes in them, they can do whatever they want. But if they are a T&D because they have a grocery store in them, then we've got to follow all these rules because we want to maintain the integrity of those. So I guess all I'm saying is I understand the urgency of doing this if we have a lot of things before us that may impact the city of Central. But I think it'd be pretty easy, just using some language from some guys down the street, getting it through our attorneys to do some things that would really, really help us and maintain the integrity of the neighborhoods that get built.
I'd like to say I agree with you on that. The little small neighborhood we live in, we've been there like 36 to 37 years, and we have restrictions, but they're not legally enforceable. And through all of these years, we just had one guy, and I went there, was real nice to him, shook his hand, and gave him the restrictions and told him, you know, what he had and everything. He told me I could take those restrictions, and he wrote it. He said, you can stick them in your ear. He said, I'm going to do what I want. So I like that.
One other thing that I noticed when I was reading through, I looked at the city of Brandon, Mandeville, and Zachary. And one thing that I kind of noticed in there, and again, I didn't print out copies for everybody to have a reference, but one of the things they talked about was on the roads, you know, the bonding period for the roads. Rather than starting the bonding period, whether it be 18 months or 1 year, or whatever it may be, they start that from the time the development is complete. They bring a certificate stating that the last lot is sold, and that period starts then. Because once all the damage is done on the roads, when they're building the subdivision, right? Normal traffic, neighborhood traffic's not what's killing our roads. But if we had done that in Amber Lakes and Village Lakes and some of these other subdivisions right now, people wouldn't need a four-wheel drive to get to and from their home, you know? So just something to consider while we're doing this. You know, that'd be a pretty easy fix to take care of the roads in these neighborhoods that are getting destroyed. That who's going to end up paying for?
People in Central.
We are.
What does ours say right now on that, on the roads?
I think it's 18 months.
18 months, but it's not on the backside, is it?
It's when the final plat is signed.
Now, I was told when I was putting that forth that I couldn't do that, what John just said.
I don't know about that.
I think we heard from a bunch of developers that were saying some of their bonding companies wouldn't.
And the
those would be
bonding
more
companies,
difficult.
we had somebody from a bonding company that came and addressed the council, I believe, when we were
Right.
doing the city services, because that is a longer bonding period, and we had to wind up staggering those bonds to get the 5-year period covered, because they don't sell bonds for those periods.
So I went with the most 18 months, thinking, you know, what's going to happen, but
We looked at 24 months, but we couldn't find anybody that said they would.
that's right.
Zachary did.
That's right. And then we hear Zachary does it, so how? How can they do it and we
I
can't?
can call the city attorney in Zachary and see.
Yeah.
Will you do that?
Mhm.
I think we need to do what John said about the covenant. I think we need to put some. I was involved with that subdivision heavily, and I think on page 55, on 7, if we can adopt some of that language in there, as a councilman, I would appreciate that.
Yeah, just remember.
Now, it's hard at a council meeting to do that, but now we can maybe introduce it and get this done.
Yeah, just remember, and I mean, I've known this for years, and you can see, you know, there are attorney general's opinions and there are court cases that make it very clear that cities cannot enforce private subdivision deed restrictions. And there's court cases. You know,
That's where
right, and that's why I remember Leanne Batson, the city parish. Every time I come up, she would say, "No, you don't even attempt to." And Elliot Atkinson with the Federation of Civic Associations, he's the attorney, say, "Don't even attempt to do it. You will get sued and you will get brought up." But it's how you manipulate it. You know, if they say you got to have your roof a gray color and the restrictions, we can't, as a city, enforce that. You know, it's against the law. But what you can do, and what we've tried to do as part of the PUD process, is you can have certain
things that go in as part of a PUD, and that's another definition of a PUD. Like you could say as part of the zoning approval in this subdivision, it's the layout, you have to have all of your mailboxes on the same side of the street in groups of 4 for aesthetic purposes.
Certain type.
And yet we can go back to the developer and say, hang on, you need to do that. So there are certain things that we can do, like I think it came when it was with the second filing of Woodstock, you might set the minimum square footage for a house in there, as part of a PUD process. So there are certain things that you can do as part of the process to ensure that, you don't get approved and the guy says, yeah, I'm gonna do 2,400 square foot houses, and he changes it to 1,600 square feet. You're gonna say, no, that violates the PUD, the restrictions you put in on the PUD, which are part of the conditional use approval. So there are some things, we can.
But how can one neighbor city, go ahead, John.
Here's the thing. I think there's a misunderstanding, maybe I wasn't clear. I'm not talking about enforcement of the covenants to the individual level. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about to the developer, right? The developer is accountable for following the covenants, which is what he uses to sell the idea of the neighborhood, right?
All right.
That's how he defines the quality of the neighborhood. When he comes and puts this thing out there and he says, this is the type of neighborhood I'm going to have. That's how he does. Well, if he walks out and throws it in the trash and doesn't follow any of it, what does the city do? Nothing. So I'm not talking about me as a homeowner and you making me mow my grass. What I'm talking about is you hold the developer accountable to follow those deed restrictions and those covenants. Then, if the neighborhood is not following the rules and establishing the homeowners association and not maintaining it, the city can hire a company just like we just did for our homeowners association. We hired a company out of Denham Springs that manages it for us. They go around and take pictures of violations, they send out violation notices, they follow up, but instead of the homeowners association doing it, the city would actually have the right to hire a company and collect those dues to pay the fees for that company, and issue liens and do all the things. I say that, you don't actually do that, the company that you hire does all that stuff, so that you maintain the integrity of the neighborhoods. Because that's basically what happened to us, is the guy came in and threw the rule book out, and everybody I talked to said, well, there's nothing you can do. There's nothing you can do.
Right. And that's one of the advantages when Woodstock came through. That was before we had our PUD ordinance, and that was just developed as a regular subdivision.
And actually,
So we couldn't. There was nothing, like I said, that the city could do. With the PUDs, you can come in there and put some extra requirements that the city can come back and hold the developer.
Right. And I think another good thing that we should consider as part of the conversation is the track builders. Like we have a couple of, in the city now. That's what overran Denham Springs. There's no doubt. They advertise on their website from the time the slab is cured, 30 days till you move in. Now they can build houses so fast, there is no way our schools can keep up with that. If you approve a 300-unit development, they're going to have 4 or 5 crews working in there. Within a year to 18 months, you're going to have all 300 of those homes occupied. It's not like custom neighborhoods where it takes 12 to 18 months to get your home. So that's another thing to consider, I think, is how the homes are built. Number one, it's just good for business, right? These guys take their kids to school here, they go eat dinner here, they support our community, and they live in our community. So if we can keep that local, that helps all of us too, because we get more tax revenue from it. And that's a good thing. Plus, it'll slow down the rate at which we can grow.
One thing to follow up, I think he just answered the question why we need a PUD. I think if you listen to that there, that is the reason. And I asked the question, why do you? That's the answer.
And it's very easy to put some requirements in there that make it very unattractive for that type of building.
I think you need
to come and build in Central. Because if you go to Denham Springs, there's how many neighborhoods there that are 3 or 4 or 500. Try to drive somewhere in Denham Springs.
Right. I have a question for the school board.
Right. Okay.
What are we going to do about the homes that are already for sale? Everybody's focused on new construction and everything else. In my personal opinion, I don't think new construction is a problem for the starter family because they're not going to be able to afford it anyway. I mean, it's really expensive homes out here. That's one thing our group talks about all the time with COT and everything else. It's very hard to get in a new home in Central. If we make all these developments and everything else, and they're so restricted and so on, the new family's not going to move in. But there are a ton of homes as in mine on Richardson and stuff like that, that are 125, 100,000, maybe even 130,000 if I'm lucky, that this family's going to move in with 3 kids. 2 kids, 2.5, I don't know what the national average is right now, 2.5 and a dog. What are we going to do about that? How are we going to control the growth of the central community school system with that kind of stuff? Because there are a lot of older families moving out. I'll give you my mom and dad, for instance. My family's property there and everything else. They're ready to go to Pride. They're going to be selling that off, whatever. Now that would be a new development, but let's say they lived in neighborhoods. And a lot of people are moving out because of the traffic and stuff like that. So younger families are moving into these older homes and all. What would we do about that?
I'm gonna look for the city to figure that out. I don't know.
Well, I mean, and I go back to the reference where you said the school shall on that committee thing. So basically the school board is going to dictate, have a say in any development that goes on in Central.
Why wouldn't you have traffic say that?
Well, and I go back and I use this reference also, just like with these families moving into these other homes, younger kids and stuff like that. Grandma, grandpa, they're moving out, they already have vehicles, these younger families move in, they got a couple vehicles, their kids aren't driving yet. Yes, they will be before long. So your traffic getting exponentially increasing at the moment with new homes and stuff like that. Yeah, so I see the same problem, but are we going to stop all development based on, or really put that bar so high that you're not going to have, I guess, those families and stuff like that move in? One thing y'all did, y'all went to IBM, from what I understand. The city and the school board went to IBM and came out here and showed them, from what I understand, I didn't get to go, but some people went to IBM and said, hey, the downtown development district, take a look at Central. All these people that are going to IBM and stuff are going to need a place to live. We want y'all to come to Central.
You know something I don't know.
Well, I mean, I guess it's a catch-22, and I worry about putting that in because there's always going to be a stop development gap between the city and the school board. Correct?
No, I just want it controlled.
Okay.
What we have. I'm not saying stop anything. I'm saying it needs to be controlled and everybody on the same playing field.
I guess that's what we need to figure out.
I think when a developer goes back here and he looks at this back sheet and he fills it out, he knows how many lots he can put in there, homes he can put in there, and that's it. That's why I think this is so good.
Okay. So I guess, I don't know, it's the new development is what I worry about, because we're going to need new development for the city to survive itself on tax dollars and stuff like that, because that's all we get.
Absolutely. Let me ask you a question. Who do you think should be building those homes?
I think, what do you mean?
I mean, you think it should be somebody outside, or you think it should be the guys in the
Oh, I mean, I would love to have somebody like, who owns Stabs? Rabelais. Build every home in Central. Or Couillon, or whatever. But even then, they got to get to a, well, I mean, whether you like him or not, I mean, I don't know. But what I'm saying is, yeah, I would love Central Development. My business has been out here before McDonald's was ever out here. I would love for everybody to come buy their computer from me, too. But what it is they're going to build to the market. Do I think we need to inundate Central? No, I'm not saying that. But I worry about, there's always going to be the worry of, we're always going to overcrowd the school. Doesn't matter if you do a 14 neighborhood development or a 400 neighborhood development. That's what everything has heard. So I guess my long-term plan is, how do we fix that problem with the school? I understand controlled growth, but it's every time a development is done, whether it's inside or outside or anybody else. That was my main concern. I mean, if we're going to put a moratorium on subdivisions from now till whenever, like we did with apartments, go for it. I do think you'll find people, and I've talked to several of them, that will go somewhere else. And everybody has the attitude of, well, they'll come home. It doesn't matter. Eventually somebody will come here and get it. We lose businesses because of that. Councilman Lou he jokes about it when we had our economic development director. Where's our Taco Bell? Everybody talks about where's our Chick-fil-A is a big one now. they've told us before, you don't have the density, you don't have this, that, and the other. IHOP has been looking at Central. You don't have, so we need to find areas that we can do, to me, some density. And control the growth also at the school system, or find out what does the school need to keep up with the growth also in that whole plan. That's what I'm trying to get at. Because you're going to need that same plan with the old homes also.
And what woke me up was what the city had hired done, and we already 2017 totals and students, what they projected we was going to have in 2017, and where we there in 2013, that gives me a wake-up call.
Correct, but other than, what is it, Amber Lakes?
You got 118
Woodstock,
going in on
we've only
River.
approved how many subdivisions since becoming a city?
We've done Twin Lakes, Village Lakes, Woodstock, Wisteria Lakes,
5?
Burlington,
Burlington Lakes.
and Gates at Burlington.
Gates at Burlington.
What about Hampton? I don't know if that's before.
Hampton, we did a fourth filing that they haven't built yet, but we did approve that. Village of Magnolia Square, that's 500.
Well, that's
It's 118 on Denham Road.
I can't afford a place. I mean, when the apartment at Village of Magnolia Square costs $400,000, I'm not moving in there. It's got an elevator, for God's sakes.
Can I submit to you, just like you're talking about the older homes?
Yes, sir.
If we put a moratorium, and we're not gonna develop another neighborhood. Or let's go to the extreme, let's say we're not gonna build another home in the city of Central for a year. I bet you within 3 months your home will sell. And I bet you all the rest of these homes out here will sell too. And rather than the property values continuing to decline and go down in these areas, people would buy those homes and they would move in them with their families. And it would be good for the people that are here. It would be good for the city of Central because all of these homes that are sitting out right now, the value's going down and down and down on because they can go buy, a brand new home for less than it cost to build this house 30 years ago. That would actually be good for Central because rather than, some of the older neighborhoods continue to decline, their value would go through the roof.
Well, see, that's just it. And I'm going to tell you from a personal standpoint, mine went from 180 to 130. Don't know why, just we had it appraised and it dropped that much. We thought it went through the roof. Like, yeah, let's go ahead and sell this house and we'll move up and everything else.
Well, one of the reasons is the tract builders that are building, or the things that are being compared to. When I built my home was not elaborate. It appraised for $134 a square foot. The first home he sold in there was $98 a square foot. I couldn't even, I couldn't even build my home for that. Right? And that's what your home value is being based on just as well as mine is now.
I guess the whole point that I wanted to get at is it's not just the new growth. I think whether the city and the school board has to work together for the school board to be able to keep up with what just generally happens with the city also. You know what I'm saying? I'm not being negative about it. What I'm saying is these homes are out there and they're going to fill with young families and you're going to have that 2013 to 2017 growth spurts or whatever, even based on the old stuff, older homes, I guess. So, and I relate all this to the ordinance and get to where I'm going with it. I do think we have some really good restrictions in place. I think the city, over the last 8 years, has done an amazing job at controlling the growth out here. I mean, through the master plan, through the moratorium on apartments, through what we've created with the 7-to-1 down to 4-to-1, what we've done with some of the net density and everything, I think we've done a really good job of that. And I think you're talking about putting committees and everything together. With the people that's worked on this, we go ahead and get this passed, send it back to P&Z if you so like, let them review what's there to see if any of the substance change has actually affected what they originally had. I agree with a lot of the changes we had today with what we had brought up. And I have some changes myself that I would like to see in it, but I was going to ask to do amendments and go to the P&Z meeting and stuff like that. I'll base it on the architectural thing. And I'm just going to be point blank. I asked to hold off on the architectural thing at a council meeting and was told, we need to just pass this and we'll fix it as we go. This is a lot more important and a lot more thing to control what's fixing to happen with these 300 home developments or something like that, we need to pass this thing and get the core base down, and then we fix it as we go. And that's what I'm asking, is let's just get this thing turned into the P&Z and move forward.
Okay. The gentleman across here, and then I'm gonna let the council close out.
I can hold my comment.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, Wayne, Tony, and what we're gonna do is come up with a plan, and we're gonna run with it. Wayne, do you have any closing words? No? Tony?
Well, I mean, the urgency, to me, I mean, obviously, we don't hear about these subdivisions coming before us when we have an ordinance that's 100 pages. I don't know what's on the books. I don't know what's out there. That's a disadvantage here. It'd be nice if somebody called me and said, hey, we got this going on. This is the reason why we have to look at this pretty hard. I don't get phone calls like that. It would be nice, but I don't get phone calls like that. No communication. If we were the city and we all working together, we ought to communicate a little bit better. Now, this is great. I've learned a lot from this. Even though I've been through a lot of this, it's hard for one to have a business and look at this and try to go to Zachary or go to these other cities and try to grasp what they have on the books, because sometimes I think we're trying to take EBR and try to mold it and puzzle it into Central, and it's not working. And I think, this puts a little bit of control or for the development plans before us, but how can we quickly, I'm with John back there on the covenants, because I worked with that subdivision a little bit, and I am very concerned with tract builders. And they do buy all their lumber. I talked to Pat's. He lived in a subdivision that took probably 20% of the homes, commercial homes, not commercial, but the resident homes that they built. 20% bought lumber from Pat's. 0 is buying from Pat's right now. Pat's is they're kind of the top 10% or 10 big companies that we have that would put money to the city, put money to the schools and all that. We lost out. So we need to look at this real quickly. Put some language in there, Sherry. Help us put some language in there that other cities have that can control this and make it very difficult for them, because if these homes, this 300 tract home development comes, these tract breakers, they're going to be biting at the bit, trying to get in.
That's what your PUD ordinance does, because that's not what those tract builders are attracted to. They're looking for where they can just do straight layout, straight lots, and that's part of the reason that you have the PUD. We can't make people buy things in Central. A lot of the lumber, we should be getting the taxes on it, because they're usually delivery sales and you don't usually walk in Pat's and come out with your lumber for your house. Those are delivery sales. We should be getting them no matter where that's coming from, and we can also look at that. But it can't really force you to use a local builder. We do have a permitting process that you have to be permitted. If you're a contractor, electrician, HVAC people, all that, you have to be registered with the City of Central and permitted and bonded. But we can't really say that only these people can build in Central. But I think the PUD concept and having that as a conditional use is, a way to kind of control what is within a subdivision if you've got 15 units or more.
What happens if Horton comes in and wants to build a PUD?
We can't discriminate among builders,
Are you
but
gonna
that's
tell them
really
no?
not what that's generally not what they're attracted to, because of all the startup costs and.
Oh, I agree. Are we going to tell them no?
You can't.
Well,
You can't.
and not just real quick, just to address what you said, but we had an out-of-town person come talk to us, month and a half ago, about doing a development in Central, and I think he was the front runner for a national home builder firm, and they wanted to come in and put these 60-foot wide lots, on an area. And we met with him and said, look, that's not consistent with our master plan. It's not, and he was kind of like, well, we don't like y'all's rules.
Okay.
So we were kind of like, well, you can go back out of town if you don't like it. Don't come here to us and say you don't like our rules and you don't want to do it, because that's what your national home builder wants. So he left and we haven't heard
Your
back
lot
from him.
sizes kind of discourage that. A lot of your requirements are discouraging that.
Yeah, no, I'm fine with what we have, telling him to pack his bag and go. He can build a PUD or go. It's just, we say we don't want national builders, but one of them comes in and says, I'm going to go in here and build about 14 different PUDs.
You can't discriminate.
They can't. I mean, they can't.
Well, the point I was trying to make is that we need to make these changes quickly, and what's the best route to do
I think
that?
the best route to handle it now is we have one gentleman, RJ. I think
Volunteer.
RJ, if you could get with David and have a meeting, and David can explain a lot of the questions of the wording on why things were like it was. Sherry has notes that she's taken, we have it recorded, and make the changes, because all these are just minor changes, the wording and moving some stuff around.
I'd like to go over all the changes we made tonight.
And if you want to...
I can give you a copy of it.
No, we're here for a workshop. What changes did we make tonight? Would the public like to know what changes we actually made tonight, or is everybody done with this?
Well, Sherry, what I would say is that the changes maybe, go through this revise and change and make it a different color, strike out or whatever you're going to have to do. Show us what you have changed in this document. That's the main thing from this point forward. Is this is the last one, September the 24th, right here.
Take
that
the very
one.
last one.
And then if we, from this meeting, change something, let us see what was changed and how it was changed, please.
Okay, so the September 24th to today, not from the P&Z approval to September 24th.
No, we're talking about the last document that the council had, which is on the
September
24th.
24th, right here.
To today, right now.
Make those changes, and then we can send it back to the planning and zoning at the end of the month and bring it to the council as our original plan was.
First meeting in November.
Right.
So you want this on the October P&Z?
Yes, sir.
Now, what will that, if I ask you, what will it do? Is that a problem with these 4 people that are sitting on the sideline waiting to get in?
No. In fact, 2 of them we just heard about yesterday. Just notified us yesterday.
But do we need a moratorium on
There you go.
30 days?
Well, one is a case that went
Take it
before
30 days to put
P&Z
in
a
place.
month ago and was deferred. So, and that happened. So it's in a deferral right now. It went before P&Z 2 months ago because he hadn't made his mind what he wants to do. The other 2 just talked to us yesterday, and we haven't even met with them yet.
So advise us what to do. What do we do?
It's going to take you a month to get a moratorium in place because it's not been introduced. The deadline for introduction was today at noon for the next meeting, and then have to lie over to the next meeting.
I think the best thing to do
And
is
that's
follow,
the same week as P&Z.
the original steps that we're going to take, make changes, pass it, and then present it before the planning and zoning, bring it up at the council meeting first Tuesday in November. And we'll be through with this. I don't think the next 45 days is going to, all of a sudden, we're going to have a rush of people for the move in and slabs are going to be poured. Let's be reasonable. Don't panic, okay?
What's the deadline for P&Z?
October 11th, Woodrow?
October 10th for the November meeting.
October the 10th.
Right.
So
today is the
November
first.
meeting, right?
No, for November. Applicants that
He's talking about a meeting, right?
He said a deadline.
Deadline
He's
for
talking
the
about
agenda.
To get the agenda in for the P&Z.
Oh, for which meeting? For which?
October.
For the agenda.
You're talking about the zoning code document,
The zoning
though.
code, right.
Not new
Not the
subdivisions.
subdivision.
Not a subdivision, it's zoning code.
Yeah, zoning code.
Packets go.
Well, the packets go out on the 17th,
The agenda has to be set 20 days prior.
and the agenda needs to be by the end of the week,
In the what,
Friday,
Friday, what date?
the 4th.
You think that
This
you can
this
make yours?
week, that's what I'm trying to say.
So you can get it on the agenda.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead and put it on the agenda and you can work
Okay,
out the details.
okay.
Yeah.
All right, so we need to make sure that we get that on the agenda.
Okay.
Yeah, that's dope.
We just can copy it from the council agenda.
All right.
Okay, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Yep.
Motion to adjourn. Thank you all.